Well, good afternoon, everybody. And once again, happy birthday to Patty. Patty, where are you? Good. Okay, good. Because occasionally during the talk, since you invited me, and I'll look over and go, "Are we okay?" I don't want to offend anybody or anything. Now, I appreciate the introduction, and yes, I've been in the television, in the entertainment, and the marketing business for 40 years. Started when I was 12. No, just kidding. And what I'm about to share today is usually a part of a workshop that is about 2-3 days long, and then usually goes into a long engagement because there's meat in here. When you start talking about the anatomy of a movement, it's not a box you check. It is a series of boxes, and it is a series of actions, but it's also a change of heart, our heart, even as we seek to change the hearts and minds of others who work with us. So rather than dive too deep, let me tell you a little bit more about me, because it's kind of fun, give you a little insight of why I even got into this. Let me go back to when I was a child. Born here in Portland, Oregon. I'm an only child, Irish Catholic family. My dad was a butcher. My mom was a nurse. And I kind of grew up in this space where you could dream. Be anything you want to be back then. The challenge was, of course, they always ask you in kindergarten, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I thought, maybe I want to be a doctor. Maybe I want to be this. I had a heart to help people, but I found myself playing music. Inside me was really a secret artist. Of course, this was validated later when I got to school and started taking biology and realized I definitely was not destined to be a doctor. But that continued even to the point where I guess I got an entrepreneurial streak because I loved magic too. And this is me, a really bad picture of me standing in my backyard doing a magic show for my neighbor kids. And it also was that first step into marketing because I charged the kids $0.25 to watch me. It worked really well. Now, granted, along the way of discovering who you are and where you are, there's some distractions along the way. Mutations, if you will. But I will tell you, when I was growing up, I don't know if you all can remember, I see some folks that are around my age group. ABC was the coolest network in the world. By far. They were the ones that had the Brady Bunch. They were the ones that had the Partridge Family. They had Love American Style. Friday nights, if you were cool, you were watching ABC because that was the cool network. And growing up as this artist kid and being attracted to things that were cool and fascinating and fun, I had this dream percolate. What would it be like to work for ABC? What would it be like to actually work in television? So I went to TV school. Actually went not too far down the street. We didn't have a lot of money. I went to the community college, Mount Hood Community College, went to their television program. It's a great program. Very fundamental program. It's like, okay, this. But the thing that's so important is having the tools doesn't make you a carpenter. It is the dream to press forward. It is the practice of the craft. It is that stirring inside you that presses you forward. And I was just nutty enough and terrified enough to believe. And I had a friend that said, hey, would you like to come visit us at Channel 2, ABC here, not that far down the street, down Sandy, and come take a peek at what we're doing. I said, yeah, I would love it. It was like a dream come true. And then I had a moment of pure terror because it dawned on me, what happens when I walk in there and I make a fool of myself? And I hear those immortal words, you'll never work in this business again. Get out of here. You stink. And what? Oh, no. So I took a tip out of a playbook. This is the next level of marketing. The quarter in my backyard, that was step one. But now I needed to change an atmosphere. And I remembered, if you maybe remember this, Famous Amos cookies. You heard those? I don't know if you know this. Famous Amos was a casting agent in Hollywood. And what he did was he would show up at the set with cookies. And enough people, said, hey, Famous Amos, you ought to make a business out of this because people like your cookies. And Famous Amos cookies were born. Well, Well, the night before I walked in, exactly 1 hour before I walked into the TV station, Bill's famous cookies were born. Now, it's not to say it's just a gimmick. Before you start poo-pooing my baking skills, I got to tell you, I'm a good cook. I really am. Mostly a good baker. It's one of the reasons before I walked up here, I had to have another bite of the birthday cake. Just like get in the vibe. But I made those cookies and they invited me back. Said, "Want to come back and watch us next week and next week and next week?" For 6 consecutive weeks, I came back and sat in the back of the control room watching quietly, politely, but handing out my cookies to every member of the crew. So by the 6th week, I come in, they were kind of expecting it, and they look at the bag and said, "Hey, Bill, there's a little lesson about name recognition attached to value. Name recognition attached to value. I'm learning these things as I go in." And the producer calls me, says, "Hey, we have a spot this summer for an internship." And I got a stack of intern apps about that thick. I said, "But Bill, everybody likes you. Everybody knows you. Would you like to be our summer intern?" 90 days later, I became one of the youngest major market directors in the country. Totally blew me away. Even today, it strikes me that when you deeply care and you're passionate and you're able to work through your fear and maybe come up with things you never thought possible, but you walked courageously into that, you can witness the miraculous. This was nuts, but it started a career that took me all over the world. I ended up not only working with ABC, but starting my own company, Spirit Media, and then have directed and worked with political leaders, celebrities, people of power and fame. I've directed some of the biggest entertainment acts in the world. And along the way, it's introduced me to the whole idea of the corporate space and bringing what I learned from marketing and messaging and showing up and making a name to working with some of these other organizations. Some of them just hire me to do the television stuff, sometimes to do videos or brand videos. But some of them say, "We need you to craft the essence of our message and help us tell it to our audience, to our investors, to our funders." So whoever that is, that's what I do. Now, the good news is you'd say, "Wow, you look like you've had a really successful career." And I'd say on most occasions, you'd say, yes, I would agree. I've been incredibly blessed. But there's a downside to it. And here was the downside. I was traveling a lot. Right up here is Portland International Airport. And I married my high school sweetheart. I have 5 kids. In fact, August 1st, we'll celebrate our 42nd anniversary. So, yeah. Just so you know, I know you're clapping for her. I get it. She knows it better than me. But I'll tell you this, I was becoming an absentee father and husband. And I didn't realize it till one day, 2 of our kids are twins. And my wife just happened to mention to me, she's very subtle. She doesn't get too far in my face because she still deeply believes that I get and hear things. And she said, "Oh, by the way, the kids, we drove by the airport and they said, 'Oh, that's where Daddy works.'" Well, I said, "There's got to be a change." So what I did was I started looking at what my business model would look like. And at that time, I had an opportunity to produce a documentary. And the power of documentaries is obviously telling stories, be able to reach an audience. But there's another sweet thing about documentaries. It's mailbox money. Is anybody familiar with mailbox money? Yeah, it's that money. If you are a writer, a producer, you produce movies, TV shows, you have the opportunity to get residuals if it actually sells. And so that means if you produce something, you need a distributor. And we produced something, and we got a distributor. They lived in Nashville, and they wanted us to fly in for a show, not only just to sign a deal, but to give me a really handsome deposit check. And I thought, oh, baby. So on January 28th, 1999, right up the street here, I hop on a plane, take off over Mount Hood, gorgeous day. Flying with my best friend, Timothy Greenwich. And Tim, by the way, is a great gospel singer, giant guy, built like an NFL linebacker. For those of it who saw me at lunch, you realize I look like I'm descended from leprechauns. I might be. So he's sitting beside me, and I start to feel sick. Now, I can't put my finger on it because I'm never sick. In fact, one of the most exciting days of my life, I should be sitting there giddy, actually reading the magazine. But instead, I'm like thinking, okay, I'm not going to be sick. I'm not going to be sick. And the more I thought about it, the more things started closing in on me. And it got so bad, I turned to Tim. I said, Tim, something's not right. And that's the last thing I said before my eyes rolled back in my head and my arms flopped by my side and my heart stopped. Now, Tim's a great singer, but he doesn't know CPR. In fact, this was before they had the devices on the plane or anything like that. So all he knew was to do chest compressions. So this giant NFL-sized guy started slamming me in the chest, and nothing happened. So he picked me up and he put me in the aisle, and he continued to do chest compressions, and nothing was happening. And he tells me that he was just getting ready to pull back his fist because he was ready to break my ribs. And as he pulls back his fist, I take a breath. Well, on the medical side of it, for those of you who wonder, what the heck happened to you? They did do an emergency landing. I ended up in a cardiac wing. And they diagnosed me with a syndrome called malignant neurocardiogenic syncope. For those of you wondering, it's a traditional spelling. No. No, malignant is a term they use. You could die from this. Neuro's brain, cardio's heart, and syncope means there's out of sync going on, and blood is not getting where it needs to go. And I have a really extreme form where when that confusion happens, my brain tells my heart to stop. Now, they don't know what causes it. They don't know how to cure it, but they know how to prevent it from happening again. So they put a pacemaker in your chest. And so today I have a beautiful Medtronic's pacemaker in my chest that monitors my heart rate all the time and sends it to my phone, which, I got my phone right here. Good. Boy, the cardiologists are going to get on my back for that. And it constantly tells me, is it going well? And if at any point my heart drops below a certain point, it triggers, pumps my heart up again, up to a certain rate, monitors it, and then it stops. And as long as my heart's back to normal, I'm fine. So here's the good news. If at any time during the next few minutes, I just flop here on the stage, give it a few minutes, I'll be right back. But the other thing you need to know is that having a medical issue like that obviously changes you. But I had a profound after-death experience, such that when I came back, it made me reevaluate everything. Didn't matter the celebrities, the power players, the corporations, all the different things I had done. I now looked at everything differently. And I was asking questions like, why? Why am I alive today? Well, I will say that if you die and you come back and you weren't a little spiritual before, you get a little spiritual. And for me, I definitely love reading philosophy, and I loved reading all these things. But I went back to my roots as a kid, going to Catholic school. And I started to open up the story of Jesus. And I started reading through it. Now, you'd think that after a death experience like this, I should be going, oh, look, he talks about love and the values and da-da-da and the Beatitudes. There's beautiful things in there. So I hope you don't perceive this as sacrilegious, because it's not intended to be. But remembering my background, I'll tell you what jumped off the page. I was looking at the greatest marketing plan in history. That Jesus was not only the architect of a faith, he was the architect of a movement. And I began to reverse engineer it. And I reverse engineer, I say, oh, look what happened here. Look what happened here. Look what happened. Oh my gosh. And I started diagramming the steps. And I ended up with 7 disciplines that were the foundation. And I reflected on the work I was doing with Apple, with Intel, with Adidas, with Nike. All these corporations and organizations I have worked with, the most successful common denominator was that they implemented these disciplines. I started doing it in my work. And I wouldn't go out to the board and go, oh, look, here's what Jesus taught me. Kind of freaks them out in the boardroom. But I would say, let's walk through this. And we use a whiteboard and we start whiteboarding it. And company after company would say, oh, this is so effective. Oh my gosh, it's so effective. We never looked at it that way. We never went that deep. All those different things came to board. And I realized we were onto something that I need to write about. And that's why I ended up writing the book, The 7 Disciplines of Relationship Marketing. And it talks about even some more lessons, some heart lessons that I think are so central to the human experience that all of us need to practice. But there's some strategic things that I want to get to. And like I said, Jesus, Google, Apple, Amazon, Lady Gaga can claim some of her success to the fact that she practices this. So with that, I want to get into the introduction of some meat for your discussion today. Okay? And hopefully as I share this, I will just tell you, I'm blown away at the brilliance in this room. Your heart, your passion, your gifting, your knowledge. But I want to give you a framework for which you to attach these things so that they can be actionable and they can actually get you the results that you're looking for. Okay? So let's talk about 5 keys to creating a movement. The first key might sound pretty simplistic. You go, oh, we know that. It's not simplistic. Number 1 is absolute purpose. Purpose. And I put that word, your manifesto, because when we talk about purpose in organizations and people that have made profound differences in the world, whether they state it or they don't state it, there is a manifesto element to it. And there's really 5 elements to it. Oh, you see, I put that picture, We the People? There's a famous manifesto. We the people purpose to form a more perfect union. Everything bridges off of that. They understand why they're doing it. And from that point forward, they start outlining the missions they must accomplish to do it. If you go read that document, you're going to go, wow, this is a framework of a great manifesto. So that purpose piece is critical. And look, and I say this lovingly, purpose is hard. It's crazy hard. Too often people get into boardrooms and maybe sit in their closet saying, why am I here? And we make up stuff. We make up stuff because we'd rather have an answer than not have an answer. We want definition, even if it's a wrong definition. But I'll tell you, if the definition for your purpose is about as exciting, dynamic as what you'd find in a dictionary, that's not a purpose. That doesn't get you up in the morning. That doesn't make your heart beat harder and faster. That doesn't ignite you into action. A good purpose will, and it's hard to get to that. But great organizations find that. And it's usually a process. So not having it is not bad. It just means we've got something to press for. And the missions part, so I have missions. Some of you might go, oh, you crazy TV guy, you put an S at the end of there and you screw that up. Well, here's what's funny. When I was looking at Jesus, he had a really core purpose aspect the more I studied it. But there's a lot of theologians, which I am not, who now report, and I've read through it and I agree, Jesus had 26 missions. 26 missions. And a lot of us go to some school that say you have to have one mission. Can you imagine winning a war with one mission? You can be activated to fight the war with a purpose, but you're going to have a lot of missions, from training the troops to cutting off the supply lines to building all these. You think about how wars are won. That's why we have missions, and that's why you often hear among our veterans this great weekend the term mission accomplished. So once you get your eyes around the idea that there's a purpose, and now I have to think about missions. So when you get ideas, you have to say, is that a mission that is in alignment with my purpose? Or is it just another good idea? Very important. And it's the difference between alignment with purpose and why we, the people, can last 200 years later and other organizations fall under the weight of their own echo chamber. The other is goals. Goals are great, but goals can be a miserable distraction. And the reason is because many goals don't align with missions. The greatest organizations make sure that every goal is a product of the mission. So if you say, I have this mission to accomplish this, then the goal is designed to say, what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? Who's responsible? And what's that deadline? So goals aren't just arbitrary things out there. There's an alignment between the missions and the goals. And there's vision. Am I getting too serious for you? I'm trying to feel the room and like, oh, crap. Okay. I want you to be hopeful about this because this really is a great recipe. How many, when you were a little kid, put together puzzles? Or maybe last night. No, the puzzle box. Now, what's the first thing you do when you put together, you start to decide you're going to put together a puzzle? What's the first thing you do? But what would you do before you do the corners? You're really close. I gotta tell you, you look at the front of the puzzle box. Yeah, see, it kind of goes without saying. You're going to put together a puzzle. I like to know what the front of the puzzle box looks so that you can do the corners. You can line the colors, you get that stuff. And here's the thing about vision is when an organization, an individual has a vision, they know what they're building towards. When you can see that vision, I do that with my clients. When a client comes to me and they say, oh, I want to do this piece for this investors. And I say, okay, great, we want to do this. I will say, what's your vision for it? Sometimes that's tough. People have vision. So here's seriously what I do in creative meetings. I say, what will it take for you to come running at me across the room with your arms waved, screaming at the top of your lungs, pick me up and name your children after me? And they go, oh, okay. Well, we want this to happen, and we want this to happen, and they start painting their vision. And that's what certainly my prayer for everybody here is that one of the challenges of doing a puzzle without that box front is that there's a lot of people selling you pieces that don't belong in your puzzle. Because they make money off of selling puzzle pieces. And they don't care whether you get the puzzle done. They just care that you buy their pieces. And there's pieces that you need that you don't know because you've been distracted pursuing puzzle pieces that someone else said you need. This is common. This happens. But when you have that vision, it gives you the authority and the clarity and even the grace to be able to say, thank you, that piece doesn't belong in this puzzle. Thank you, that's exactly what we needed. Thank you. And gratitude is a place that comes from the peace that comes with knowing what you're building. And that vision is also hard. But when you get it, it will save you massive amounts of time and money and energy. And it can spark that continued passion. Because even though, like I was talking to, I can't see where David is. We were having lunch together. David, we're talking, and the things that I got to ask them, the last thing I asked David, what would be the victory? What would be a great victory? And Dave, neither one of us are young kids. Sometimes the picture and the vision's bigger than our life. It certainly was for Jesus. And some of the things that we would say we would want to aspire to may happen beyond us. But we're faithful to make sure that we are building the pieces necessary to build that vision, whether we get to celebrate it or not, because we're committed to the purpose. And of course, the last thing is values. And I say values are important because it really is, you're in a warfare right now. I don't want to simplify it, but some of the people that you might say are fighting this organization of things we stand for actually share a lot of our values. It's just the expression of what those values are in expression and the way they prioritize them that makes us different. And even with organizations, as we act in harmony, even in this room, it's safe to say, with all the brilliance and all the heart and all the passion, that there are good values that are competing for priority. And that's okay. When you have a shared purpose and you see the big picture and the vision, you're able to navigate those values. And instead of just saying the values, that pretty little plaque we stick on the side of the wall when you walk in, becomes something you throw overalls on and you put them to work. That's what a movement does. Of course, principle number 2. Who's your audience? Who is your audience? And I call this really a calling thing. In the world of business, people say, I just want to, if I ask people who's your audience, they say, well, who's going to buy? And I would say that who's going to buy is not necessarily audience. It's bigger than that. It's knowing a calling. There's something inside you that says, I have a unique place and I have a unique message. And guess what's for a unique person? But you have to know that person. And this is just an exercise that's classic to marketing. I have what we teach in the book called the 10-digit human address. And that is, if there's someone that you have to reach, know them intimately. Don't look them as a social group. Don't look them as a geographical group. Know their demographics. Know their influencers. Because you might not be the influencer. What are their influencers? What are their needs? What are their frustrations? What is their buying journey from being exposed to something, to exploring something, to believing in something, to acting on something? What are their psychographics? Their wants, their interests, their fears, their objections. These are the pieces that are critical so that you just don't yell at the world, open a window in Manhattan and scream out. But that's what a lot of marketers do, hoping that someone down on the ground floor will hear them. And why is that so important? Because it leads to principle number 3 here. And that's message. I heard people earlier say, I got a messaging issue. We got a messaging. Well, yeah, you do. Most people do. And part of the reason that we have a messaging issue is that when we're so close to what we do, whether a nonprofit, a sales organization, whatever it is, the instinct is to scream to the universe about what we're about. But great messaging is a love letter to an individual. It means it's relevant, it's personal, it's powerful. Well, just think, for those of you, it's been a long time for me when I went on a date with my wife. But think about going on a date and sitting across from the table. And how attracted and thrilled are you sharing company with someone that's just yammers on about themselves? But sometimes that's what we feel we have to do, and then wonder why, crud, they didn't take me out again. They didn't take my text or accept my roses or whatever it is. There's a lot of people not accepting roses because the messaging is weak and self-centered. And let me just give you a couple quick tips here about messaging. Most powerful messages, they're proactive. They're consistent. They're powerful. They're relatable because people go, oh, I can relate to that. In other words, what's happening inside my brain, a lot of times there's two major aspects to communication of the brain. There's a front left cortex where logic takes place in language, but there's a limbic system where we feel. And a lot of us are busy just pounding that front left cortex as if life is just one big chess game. And if somehow I can move my queen into a position, I'm going to win the game. And that's not how life works. It's not how people work. And it's not how messaging works. So that relatable piece and knowing them goes through the limbic system. You have to feel it. They have to feel it. If there's no feeling, this is just a chess match. And at the end of the game, think about a single chess match where you saw a group come up and just scream at the top of their lungs because it changed their life. None. Think about the movements that touched the heart and literally transformed a society. That's different. So they're meaningful and they're repeatable. I'll tell you why. The least powerful messages are reactive. They're inconsistent in terms of their message and the frequency of delivery. They're insignificant because they're really asking the question, why are you talking to me about this? It's distant, as if, oh, this is something that happens somewhere else, not to me. Obviously misunderstood, and it's forgettable. In the TV news business, when I was working as a television director, we had this thing we called the news cycle. News cycle, heck, sometimes used to be a week. Sometimes it used to be 3 days. Now it's down to a day. Sometimes it's down to minutes. And part of that, and I'll just share this with you, the tragedy about media and the news is that we'd like to think that they are objective, vehicles dispensing information to the benefit of their public. That's an FCC mandate. They have to sign over this thing that says they're serving the community. But the truth is they're in business, and they only stay in business as they are able to aggregate eyeballs. And they aggregate eyeballs and manipulate the news cycle to the degree that they believe that they can either acquire and retain viewers. Because if they acquire and retain viewers, they can sell that to their advertisers and make a substantial amount of money, which is necessary to run a media enterprise. So to recognize that, we have to remember that this forgettable piece, we used to get press releases all the time that got thrown in the garbage because they weren't meaningful. We didn't think they had any significance, and they were a one-off. They weren't a part of a campaign. They weren't a part of anything that would make a difference in anybody's life. It was like another bake sale. Okay? So a public relations strategy, a messaging strategy has to rise way above that, depending upon your market. And I mean way above that, which leads us to, ta-da, principle number 4, and your most powerful weapon, messengers. I say this because the message will be amplified and distributed based upon the quality of the messenger. You can have a killer message, but the wrong messenger will undermine it. You can actually have a great messenger, but if they're not equipped with the right message, it's not going to work. It's the reason why in the entertainment industry, you see all these folks I've worked with, like right now, everybody's really hot on Taylor Swift. And one of the reasons Taylor Swift is like really hot right now, besides the fact she's a great performer, but she's also a great writer. She's one of those few combinations where you have the messenger and the message coming from the same source, and she's writing it and she's found a fan base. I'm guessing not a lot of people in here are rushing home to listening to Taylor Swift tonight. Maybe not. But there's a group that do, because she knows her audience and she sings to them with her heart out. Okay? That's the power of the message and the messenger. There's also, by the way, everybody remember like Whitney Houston, an incredible, incredible talent. Whitney didn't write her stuff. But she was a mind-blowing messenger. In fact, some people might remember the song, I Will Only Love You. That song, remember that? It was a Dolly Parton song. Okay? Dolly did it. Good song. Whitney did it. People weep when she sang that. Okay? That's the power of the message and the messenger. So you want to raise your game, raise the quality of your messengers. It's not just having a mouth, it's the right mouth. And why? Because they will use the most powerful marketing vehicle in the history of mankind. Any guess what that is? I'm going to show you. 3, 2, 1. Word of mouth. So the right words in the right mouth, mind-blowing. Mind-blowing how quickly it can amplify and multiply what you're doing. And that's the other thing. Even though we're not going to go into in great depth, the right messengers means that you don't sit in this room exhausted because you've been talking your head off and wondering if anybody's listening. An army of messengers and ambassadors multiply. They multiply the sound of your voice, the power of your message, the extension of your reach, both geographically, influentially. That is where it takes place. And of course, guess what? It takes work to get messengers. Going back to the Jesus example, he picked a really ragtag group that you'd say, why them? But each one of them, when you follow the path, you go, oh, look, this person has attention to work with Rome. This one has a work with this group. This one, Luke, he's going back to the Greeks over here. And each one, there was a strategic, when you break it out and then you lay it all out, you go, holy crap, this is warfare. That's your messengers too. You don't just distribute and hope. It is a battle plan with the right messengers. Now, there's more than just one. I think there's 3 basic types, okay? The first one is wow-wom. This is having a message that you're compelled to tell somebody because it's so dang cool. Like, did you guys know today's Patty's birthday? Today's her birthday, everybody. Is that like cool? Or guess what? Maybe someone's going to tell us later, they won the lottery. They won this. Something exciting happened. I don't know if you're a Boston fan, but Boston tied up the series, and then in the NBA championship. And now they're going to go, whatever it is, the thing that makes you go, wow, brings emotion, enthusiasm, and connects right to the limbic system. And that compels us to talk. By the way, you hear people talk about viral messaging and viral communications and social media going viral. Heard that term? Yeah. There's actually a great study, and I write about it in my book, 6 keys to virility, 6 keys to viral messaging. And this is one of them. The wow that compels people to talk. That's why when we go back to messaging and look at forgettable, why do I want to talk about that? I want to talk about, I went to the water tank and there are 3 goldfish sitting in it. That's going to make me talk. But here's the other kind. Whoa-wom. We love to talk about this. Sickness, illness, disease, train wrecks, plane crashes, blah, blah, blah. We could go down the line. Oh, and by the way, I'll apologize to you now, because for my 12 years in television, I was partly responsible for putting garbage in your head night after night, because that was our business. And guess what? Because y'all have an appetite for garbage. That's human nature. And so the degree that we know that we want eyeballs and y'all like garbage, played it up. And they played it up night after night after night after night. We wonder why people are struggling with mental health and depression and sadness and wondering, why am I here? And is there any hope? And blah, blah, blah. Because if you watch our newscast, we'll let you know, other than the kicker at the end, which will show a child petting a puppy for 10 seconds that he found in a ditch, that a fireman found for him, that lost a paw in a tragic lawnmower accident. Other than that story, I'm going to feed you garbage. And that's why WOWOM is so big. And it does play a role, but it should be a strategic role, not to take advantage of human nature, but to recognize that great marketing and movements are about telling the truth exceptionally well. And sometimes we've got some woes to share along with the wows. But there's one kind of WOM that's the worst kind of WOM, the absolute worst, and it's the red flag of any organization. It's this: no WOM. Because if your message and your movement is so insignificant that you're the only ones talking about it, that's a danger sign. Now, it doesn't mean the cause is insignificant. It doesn't mean the purpose is insignificant, but our ability to break through the noise, and the noise is getting louder, not just in this sector, but noise in general. There's estimated to be somewhere between 5 and 10,000 brand impressions being shoved in our face every single day. And it's getting louder. So this is more than just showing up. It's showing up exceptionally well. It's showing up consistently. It's showing up powerfully. It's showing up meaningfully. Which leads to point number 5. And that's methods. Now, I call it your media toolkit. Now, before anybody gets excited about, and I've outlined, here's what tools you're going to use. I'm not. And here's why. One of the biggest fights I have with my clients is they always come to me first with a tactic. We want to do this. We want to do this. We want to do this. You know, and I end up having to pull them back and say, let's go back to why. Let's go back to whom we're speaking. Let's talk about the message. Let's understand their journey, their buy-in, their influencers. You know, instead of me focusing on my sales process, I want to look at their buying journey. And that will dictate the tools. And that's why it's the 5th point, and one that only can be addressed after you've done the 4 others. It's okay to brainstorm and go, wouldn't it be nice if? And we put that on the tactic list. But ultimately, when you have a tactic or an idea, and there's a lot of you have done some brilliant things. I mean, like brilliant things. Think of all these brilliant ideas as like the gears in a Swiss watch. As shiny and beautiful as they are, the magic happens when they're connected and meaningful towards a single purpose. Outside of that, they're just shiny gears. And great movements know how to take all those beautiful shiny gears and tactics and start putting them together, multiplying the effort and producing a synchronous outcome. So what are they? You know, in the classic sense, we break things with our clients down into online and offline tools. These are classic offline tools: TV, radio, print, billboards, direct mail, public relations, video, events, workshops. Online tools, websites, pay-per-clicks, search engine optimization, analytics, data mining, social media, vlogs, blogs, podcasts. However we look at the buying behavior, we make sure we serve it up the way they did, the same way our good friends here at the Holiday Inn decided, I guess most of these people want to eat off of plates. I'm thankful they knew that about us, because they put out plates and we enjoyed a lunch. And a good media plan is, what kind of plate are we going to put out for them? Because we know them well. We know them really well. So as I kind of wrap up this session here, again, I want to give you an outline and a great gateway into a continued discussion you're going to have. And I'm going to stick around, and my intention is not to necessarily facilitate it, but to be able to speak to it and to be a sounding board for you. So if you have questions about what I'm sharing, or things you want to share about moving forward, I even brought whiteboards out to make sure we categorize them properly. And I'll tell you, one of the first questions I'd love to have you hit on, if you don't mind, Patty, is going to be, what does the front of your puzzle box look like? That will be a breakthrough. What does the front of that's a vision. What's the front of the puzzle box? And so going into that, I encourage you, remember your first love. Don't forget your first love. that stirred you even into this area. Remember your vision. A lot of you have had visions. And one of the saddest funerals any of us could ever attend is the one where we watch somebody bury their dreams. Don't let that happen. And if we need to get out shovels and pull some of those dreams back out, that might be what we have to do. Celebrate your accomplishments, because this group has done incredible things. Everybody in here in their own way have done powerful things, and they have even more to do. So I just asked this question. Are you ready to start a movement?